I still remember the exact moment my world cracked open, like a fist punching through glass I didn't know was fragile. "You're being selfish," my father barked, standing in the middle of my backyard as if he'd planted every blade of grass himself. "Elena's boys need room to run. We're putting the house on the market next week. You and Sophie can take the studio over the garage." And just like that, my life, the one I'd bled for, was reduced to a footnote. The realtor beside him scribbled notes, measuring the distance from the old oak tree to the fence like it was already sold. My sister Elena stood by the patio, arms crossed, watching her twins chase each other across the lawn that still had Sophie's hopscotch chalk fading in the sun. Her husband Derek let out a low chuckle. "About time," he said, clapping my dad on the shoulder. "A proper home for a proper family." Sophie was sitting on the back steps, legs swinging, clutching a dandelion crown she'd spent the morning weaving. She was 9. She didn't cry. She just pressed the crown flatter against her chest, petals crumbling between her small fingers, like she was trying to disappear into it. I felt the rage rise hot and fast, but I swallowed it. I'd spent my whole life swallowing it. "Smile. Nod. Fix it later." "Understood," I said, voice flat, the way I'd learned to keep the peace. My father gave a satisfied grunt and turned back to the realtor, already discussing staging. That night, I started packing. I am Nathan, 40 years old, mechanical engineer, single dad. Sophie came to me 6 years ago, adopted after my wife, and I spent years in waiting rooms and courtrooms, praying for a miracle. Then Claire was gone. Drunk driver on an icy road. No would-be. Just me and this tiny girl with big brown eyes who called me daddy like it was the easiest thing in the world. My family never quite accepted her. Not really. Blood matters, they said without saying it. At holidays, Sophie sat at the kids' table while Elena's boys got the spotlight. Gifts for the real grandkids were extravagant. Sophie's were thoughtful afterthoughts. My parents called her that sweet child instead of her name. And me? I was the reliable one. The one with the good job. The one who quietly covered overdrafts, medical bills, down payments, whatever the family needed. I'd paid for half of Elena's fertility treatments. Covered Dad's back taxes twice. Loaned money that never came back. I told myself it was what you do for family. But this? Taking the house we'd turned into a home? Shoving us into a 400-square-foot studio like unwanted guests. This was different. The house wasn't even theirs to sell. It had belonged to my grandmother Evelyn, the one person who ever saw Sophie clearly, who kept a drawer full of glitter pens because Sophie loved art, who hung her drawings on the fridge and called her my brightest light. When Grandma fell and needed assisted living, Dad swooped in with power of attorney forms. He convinced her to let me and Sophie live here temporarily. I paid every bill, fixed every leak, kept her roses blooming. Dad called it the family house. Translation, whatever they needed, whenever they needed it. That first night after they left, I packed in silence. Sophie watched from the couch, hugging her stuffed fox, eyes tracking every box I taped shut. "Are we in trouble?" she whispered. "No, ben, primelit sufoli. We're just making space." She nodded like she believed me, then went to her room and started folding her clothes into her backpack. Neat little piles, like she'd done this before. At 11:17 p.m., my phone lit up. Unknown number. "Don't leave yet. Check behind the old chest freezer in the basement. There's a panel. Bring a light." Gmia, Grandma didn't text. She barely answered her phone. My pulse kicked hard. Another message followed. "Hurry, Nathan, before they take everything." I told Sophie to stay in her room, grabbed the flashlight, and went down the creaky basement stairs. The air was cool and damp, thick with the smell of old cardboard and dust. The freezer hummed in the corner. Dad insisted we keep it running just in case. I moved it aside, muscles straining. Behind it, the wall looked wrong. A section of paneling slightly off color. I pried it with my fingers. It gave way easily, like someone had opened it recently. Inside, a metal lockbox and a thick manila envelope sealed with tape. My name written across it in Grandma's careful script. "Nathan, only if they try to take the house." My hands shook as I carried them upstairs. Sophie was asleep on her bedroom floor, surrounded by her neatly packed clothes, Fox tucked under her chin like a shield. I sat at the kitchen table and opened the envelope. The letter was short. Nathan, if you're reading this, your father has gone too far. I changed the trust last year. You're the trustee now. The house is yours and Sophie's. Deeded, recorded, final. He has no authority. He'll fight. He'll lie. Don't engage. Call the attorney, number enclosed. And open the box. You deserve to know what he's done with my money. I'm sorry I didn't stop him sooner. You and Sophie are my real family. Love always. Grandma Evelyn. I read it 3 times before the words sank in. Then I opened the lockbox. Bank statements. Withdrawal slips. Transfers. Thousands routed to accounts in my father's name. To Elena. To Derek. Notes in Grandma's handwriting. Asked Richard what this was for. He said investments. Another. He promised it was temporary. They've been bleeding her dry. The house wasn't just greed. It was desperation. They needed a big sale to cover the hole they dug. But that wasn't the worst of it. At 8:03 the next morning, I called the attorney. He answered on the first ring. Your grandmother warned me this might happen, he said quietly. The trust is ironclad. Your father was removed as trustee 18 months ago. The deed transfer is already filed. I stared at Sophie's dandelion crown on the counter, petals brown and curled. What about the power of attorney? Revoked. We'll send formal notice today. Then I did the hardest thing I'd ever done. I logged into the joint accounts, the ones I've been helping with for years. Stopped every automatic transfer. Removed my name from their utilities. Changed passwords. Closed access. Confirmations pinged in one after another. Transfer canceled. Access revoked. Account secured. By 9:30, the call started. Dad. Elena. Derek. Mom. Then the text from Dad. Why did my transfer bounce? Call me immediately. I typed one line. I'm done funding people who treat my daughter like she's disposable. They showed up at 1:47 p.m. Dad stormed up the walk like he owned the ground beneath his feet. Elena and Derek behind him, twins already running toward the swing set. I opened the door but didn't step aside. You're making a mistake, Dad started. No, I said, holding up the folder of documents. You did. Grandma changed everything. I'm a trustee. The house isn't for sale. And you're off every account I've been paying. Elena's face went white. She wouldn't. She did. Months ago. Derek laughed nervously. Come on, man. Be reasonable. The boys need. I have a child too. I cut in. And she's not moving into a garage, so you can have what was never yours. Dad's eyes narrowed. After everything you've taken, I finished. It's over. Sophie appeared beside me then, barefoot, Fox in her arms. She looked up at them. Really looked, and Derek actually smirked. Hey kid, excited for your new room upstairs. She pressed closer to my leg. I closed the door, locked it, leaned against it while they shouted outside. Sophie whispered, Are they gone? Not yet, I said, but they will be. And for the first time in my life, I believed it. Grandma passed 3 months later. Peacefully. She held Sophie's hand and told her the roses would bloom brighter because she was there too. See them. Dad tried everything. Guilt, threats, even showed up at the funeral acting bereaved. But the papers were unbreakable. We stayed. Sophie still draws cities in chalk on the patio. The hopscotch lines are fresh and bright. Sometimes I catch her looking at the garage studio like it's a ghost. And I wonder, if they come to you like that, demanding your home, erasing your child, would you have found the strength to close the door? Or would you still be packing boxes in the dark? Tell me in the comments. If this happened to you, could you forgive them? Thanks for watching. Do subscribe for more stories.